I've got 10 o'clock, so how about if we... Riley, how you doing?
Just trying to work through all of this like everybody else.
All right, I've got 10 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting of the Roswell Airport Advisory Commission to order. Evangeline, I don't think we need to do a roll call because you know who's here. And I would ask all of our guests to sign in too when you get a chance. So we'll skip on to approval of the agenda, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Call to approve the agenda, and a second by Councilor Kunkel. Any discussion or debate? If not, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. Next up, item 4, the minutes from the Thursday, April 23rd meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented for the Thursday, April 23rd, 2020 meeting.
I have a motion by Commissioner Armstrong to approve the minutes from April 23rd meeting, and a second by Commissioner Burris. Any discussion on this matter? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. Item 5, Mr. Stark. Lots of good things going on.
Yes, there is. Good morning, Commissioners. I'll start off with my report for number 5. The biggest announcement that we have for this month is that we have been offered a second-year military airport program grant. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was in our CIP list. We had broken that project up into 2 years, the first year being in FY 2020 of the federal 2020. We got the grant last year for the parking lot in federal FY 19. So this will be a $3 million grant, and it will be the first phase of a project to rehab all of our ramp area from the general aviation area on the west side of the airport all the way around to the northeast side where Air Sale Hangar 85 is. That project covers all of that. So we'll get as much of it as we can with the $3 million for this year. And again, that number is still at this point approximate because we're working on the scope and the grant. We have done the objective paperwork so that the FAA understands what our objective is. We'll be doing the grant application within the next week or so. And then they'll be getting back to us with the back and forth negotiation part of it of what they want to do and look at a real number and a real grant offer, which we'll deal with somewhere down the road. But we should be looking at actually doing some construction on that within a year. And then if we're lucky, they will do the same thing again next year and get the second phase of that project. So that's a very good sign for us. Normally when the FAA does a first phase of a project, they're going to do the second phase. They look at them together. Mr. Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah, would that possibly cover widening taxiways at Bravo? The 50-foot? No.
That will be a separate project.
Okay.
What this one will do is it'll cover basically the aging ramp. We've got a lot of spalling and cracking and a few panels in the concrete that are completely cracked and ruined that need to be replaced. So it'll bring everything back up to new condition is what it'll do.
Okay. So this is specifically for ramps, not any taxiways.
That's correct. It's specifically for ramps.
Okay.
Okay.
But that'll give us crack seal and any of the concrete and asphalt repair that we need.
Is there any matching percentage to this?
Good question. I should have mentioned that. There is not on this one because 2020 money gets, the match gets covered by the CARES Act. So this would normally be a 90-10, but because of the CARES Act, the matching is going to be covered there, so we'll pay nothing out of this.
Okay.
The ramp area in front of 58 and 66, Air Sale has added some extra contract employees to work on that. I will still say that it seems a little slow to me, but I know they're working on it. They've got their own processes they have to deal with in terms of going through the inventory side of it and moving these old parts out. But we are seeing a little bit of movement, and hopefully that'll accelerate as we go on. Air service. We have no additional changes for June, so for the month of June, we will still continue with the one flight out in the evening. One flight in the evening, they stay overnight, and the one flight out in the morning. However, July 7th, our flight schedule returns to normal with the 3 flights to and from Dallas and the Phoenix flight turn in the middle of the day. And now, I will say that with the caveat that that's what's on the schedule now. I did some looking, and Kevin's got something to say, but I'll get to you in just a sec. But matter of fact, you need to come up to a microphone, so go ahead and come up over there by Mark. But I will say that schedule is back on normal, but it doesn't mean that they won't cancel some of those flights like they have in the past. We've still got time for them to adjust. Kevin, go ahead.
I wanted to say that, it is on the schedule, but they don't generally finalize their schedule till the last week of the month. So, that's been the way the schedule has been since April. So, there's a very likely possibility that it will go back to what it is now, but there's also a possibility that we may get those additional flights. I just don't want anybody to get their hopes up, because that's what the schedule says now. They do have till the end of the month to change it of June.
And I would say the one takeaway from this right now, until it actually happens, is that Americans' intent is to go back to that schedule permanently as things come back. And would you not agree with that, Kevin?
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think they're planning to use this pandemic to make any schedule changes. In the end, they go back into what they were doing.
Let me ask on this point, do you think it'd be worthwhile for us to start using Fly Roswell to promote the July 7th so that people will start making reservations to Phoenix so that they have an incentive to resume it?
I've been thinking about those type of ideas, and I haven't had a chance to follow up on it, but I want to get with our consultant, and yeah, that's one idea that I've had, that we do some marketing to start building it back up. I would say, yes, Phoenix would be a prime effort to start doing some marketing on, but it wouldn't hurt to do Dallas either.
Okay.
The sooner we can build both of them up, the sooner we solidify that schedule that we had.
Okay. You guys have any thoughts on that? Let's talk to,
Jeff.
thank you. And
Yeah, got it on my list of things to do.
it's okay. And talk to him, and then maybe get with Juanita, or maybe you and Juanita talk to Jeff. And
Yes.
talk about how we maybe want to pursue this.
Okay.
'Cause,
No, I like that idea. That was actually something I'd been thinking of, but don't really have any flesh on that bone yet.
Okay.
And that's all that I have. If Mr. Bleth has anything.
Did you want to talk about the numbers?
Oh, yeah, I do. That's right. I got this in front of me. So that was what I had on my notes. But so I did want to hit real quick. No, I'll do that in the next one. Go ahead. Go ahead. That'll be in 6.
That'll be 6. No other items.
Okay. So if we're ready, I'll move on to 6.
Okay, unless there's any more questions about what he's shared with us so far. Go ahead, Commissioner Kunkel.
I've got a question on, we know that the tear-down pad that's by Air Sale is going to go away. Would some of this rehab work, would that take care of that area on the ramp, or no?
It could.
Okay.
It could.
Oh, good question.
That's a good question.
Who determines that?
We do. we'll determine the scope, and then the FAA will approve or disapprove, or they may come back and do a little back and forth to make modifications. So, but we start with the scope of it. So, what we might want to do is my priority would be to look at the area around the terminal and the GA area first. Terminal, obviously, because that's the first thing people see when they get off an airplane, and right now you're getting off, and I won't say it's horrible, but it's not great. You get off and you see enough cracks, and you see, I worry a little bit about if someone steps a heel in a crack, that type of thing, and so I want to eliminate those issues, and then of course the aesthetic issue, and then the issue with the general aviation ramp is that we've been working on that for several years now, a little at a time, and we can finish that up and get it all back to relatively new asphalt, and have a nice ramp over there that we can maintain going forward. At this point, the one that we have now, even if you start putting oil and crack seal on it, you're really dumping money down a hole. We need to remill it and relay it.
Is Armstrong a part of this as well? I mean,
Yes, they
they're
are.
working with you on this?
They are.
Okay.
On that, this will be federal money, so we'll not actually be able to start till October 1 at the earliest, correct?
So it'll be this year's money for them. So the way the grants run with the FAA is they usually are awarded no earlier than about May, and that's actually very early during the current fiscal year. So we're working on grant money for fiscal 20 for them.
Okay.
And then we'll start over again in 21. So it takes 9 to 10 months to go through the grant process. We start that in October, and then that culminates in an award, usually in the summer.
Okay, so we don't have to nail down the decisions on whether the tear down is done first or the other areas are first.
Correct. No, we don't. We do have some time, and my thoughts, and again, you guys are obviously welcome to put in your 2 cents worth, but my thoughts are that we deal with the stuff that people see and walk on and are involved with first, and then that might be the second phase to go into the tear down area repair. But yes, it's certainly a piece of the ramp, so it would qualify.
Okay. Anything else on this? Okay. You want to go on to 6?
Okay, so for number 6, we have had, as you guys know, last month a bunch of airplanes come in all at once, 10, 20 a day sometimes. We got a lot of traffic jam, if you will, on the old closed runway 1230. The total now is around 470 airplanes stored on the airport. Since this started in the middle of March, we've had, I'm showing 307 airplanes come in as of 5/18. I think, Mark, haven't we had about 2 or 3 more come in since then? So we're around 310 new ones. Randy's nodding his head too, so I think we're close. But because of the traffic jam we had with airplanes needing to be inducted and engines run and all kinds of things on the concrete on 1230, it became necessary to close runway 1735 to utilize pavement that was near the runway to do the shuffling. So we did that a week and a half ago. We were closed for 7 days. AirSail did a great job of moving airplanes. They cleaned off all of the north side of runway 1230 north of taxiway Charlie. Moved a lot of airplanes, and that's given them room to continue moving those airplanes off of the south side. So now they can shuffle them to the north side and into some of the other places. They've also moved a lot of airplanes off of the ramp near the terminal. There's now, instead of, I think there was about 11 Airbuses and 737s over there. There's now 1 777 sitting in that area to the east of the fire station. So we have some area that's cleaned up. What has helped AirSail to do that is we've had a bit of a break in arrivals. American is mostly done, if not completely done. United has slowed down while they take a look at what else they want to bring. So we had a natural break that worked out well with the runway closure to get everything straightened out, and I think we're in a much better position now to continue moving airplanes into their permanent spot. We are expecting more airplanes. I don't have a solid estimate, but I will say in the industry, there are literally still thousands of airplanes sitting out there that need to be moved to permanent storage. For us, we'll still be probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple hundred, but it's hard to say what we'll get until we know what is coming so that we know where they fit. American and Armstrong both are working on footprinting airplanes in certain places. What American is looking at is they want to keep their airplanes together, and that makes perfect sense. Armstrong is looking purely at, okay, can we put 777s here? Can we put 737s there? You know, where we put things. And we've done some experimentation with a CAD program of how many 777s that we can put on runway 1230 and Sierra. And that comes out somewhere also using the ramp over from hangar 58 up to hangar 85. All of that comes out to around 100 777s. Now, we're probably not going to get that many, but it's an exercise of using the biggest airplane that we're getting here to see how many of those we can get, so we know that the numbers are larger if we're getting smaller airplanes. And we still have a fairly large amount of room left on the old asphalt that we cleared off, where we'll be putting the narrow bodies and the RJs. We also have some probable movement of some of them getting flipped, getting sold, and leaving within the next 6 months. So this will be a moving target. It'll be churn or shuffle, whichever way you want to put it. We'll have airplanes coming in, we'll have others going out, but in the end, it's a very net positive for us. I wanted to give you an example, or give you a report on what the numbers have been. We talked last month about March, and that it was really only half a month in March. But as I compare to February, which was a normal month, so landings, revenue from landings went up between February and April. They went up 1,550%. So the month before was about double that. March was about double that. We had a lot more landings. Parking, on the other hand, has gone up more than what the landings did. It's up 186% over what we had in February. And you can expect the parking to continue to go up, and most likely the landings will continue to go down as these aircraft start tapering off and we're not getting as many at one time. But we've already had a large windfall just in the last 2 months, and that should continue. Potentially, I would say it would be safe to say at least for the next 18 months. That's about what the airlines believe is going to take for a recovery to happen for them. If we're lucky, if they're lucky, it'll be sooner. But for us, I think that we'll see that go at least 18 months, if not longer. Questions?
Go ahead.
Last month, did we talk about the numbers being pretty close to not really having much more room for more planes, or what you're saying is these adjustments have been made to allow for more?
We did talk about that, the original estimate of about 800 airplanes, and not knowing if that was accurate, and I would say that we still don't really know if that's accurate. Conservatively, I think we could put a couple hundred airplanes out here if most of them are narrow bodies. We might get closer to that 800 number. That's why we're working on maximizing the parking space that we have, actually putting the footprints of airplanes using a CAD program on to our airport, so that we can say, this is how it goes. We can move them around and play with the puzzle pieces and see how they fit and see how we can maximize that space. But part of the issue that we have as we do this, if we purely just want to fill it up with airplanes, we can get very close to the 800 number. But one of the issues that we have is the types of maintenance that need to be done on these airplanes. Some of them need to be pulled out to go do runs, and it would be convenient if they could do engine runs in place. But we're not going to be able to do that with all of them, so we have to make sure that we allow ingress and egress for the ones that need that. And that's where we really don't know a lot of the answers, because We don't know exactly where we're placing them all, so we're trying to come up with different scenarios of where you've lined them up down one side and you have an aisle to get them in and out. And then we did one scenario where you lined them down the side and then we filled the aisle. So we may do, in the long run, some combination of those type of scenarios in different places. But the idea is to maximize the use of the space and still be able to do the maintenance.
So I'm curious, perhaps because I don't understand, but it would appear that if we're going to get more planes, they would have already been here. I mean, is that not correct? I mean, none of the airlines are really flying or have that many flights, and
No, but what they have right now is they have airplanes in more short-term storage in a lot of airports all over the world. And these airports, as they open back up and start doing more passenger service, they need to move these airplanes. They're going to be in the
Okay.
way. And so, and Randy, jump in here anytime if you know something I don't, but quite honestly, that's really the situation. They're spread out all over the world in a lot of different airports, but they're not in long-term storage. They're not in a place where they can stay more than just, as long as they have to. So the airlines are really kind of desperate right now. There are, what?
Just real quick, so both Boeing and Airbus have given break to the airlines as far as when the aircraft have to go into storage. So they're letting.
Microphone. Sorry.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, so as I was saying that both Boeing and Airbus have given relief to the airlines to be able to park the aircraft without putting them in storage right off the bat. And what that means is that they can leave the aircraft at airports in a ready for flight status. So they're not really pushed right now to move those aircraft out. We feel like there's going to be another wave. There'll be another wave. The airlines are not going to look the same as they did. They don't look the same now, or before this all happened, but they definitely won't look the same
okay.
when it goes back. There's too much capacity. So when you've got hundreds of aircraft still parked at airports, they're going to have to move them at some point. I know that because of the relief that the government gave with the $25 billion that went into the airlines, that cash will run out probably around September or so. And most of the big carriers don't have the cash to continue operating as is. So
Okay.
we feel like there'll be another wave. What that wave is, I don't have a clue,
Right.
but
Okay.
anyway, that's kind of why you're not seeing more. They're trickling in. United's trickling airplanes in. Americans saying, we're done, but I wouldn't
Well,
promise that.
I thought over this past weekend, I saw a couple of planes going out. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, they're pulling them out of storage and.
No, right now,
Right.
we are positioning some of the Frontier aircraft. Frontier has decided to put some back into service this summer.
Okay.
Whether they keep those out into service, I don't know, but they are putting aircraft into service between now. We've got 2 aircraft that'll leave next week, and then they'll filter a few in through the middle of August.
Okay.
Haven't heard anything from United. American may be looking at it. From what I understand, ticket sales are ramping up for the summer. But if that continues, usually you have a huge travel time in the summer, and then it falls off, that first week of September.
Okay.
And part of what you may have seen, yesterday, we had one aircraft leave. There's been one that was at Dean Baldwin getting painted, and that one's actually done some testing here and then left. And then we had another 767 leave yesterday that was sold. So you'll see some of that. These airplanes are a lot of them not going to go back to American or United, but they will go into service with another airline. So as they get sold, they'll fly out of here. They may not be going back to service for those airlines. Most likely not.
I understand that Dean Baldwin has lost some contracts that they had in place to paint or whatever the case may be, and and that has gone away. Is that accurate, or?
It's my understanding that what they're doing right now is military contracts and freight contracts, because those freight, of course, with everybody being at home, is just getting busier and busier, with people ordering things off the internet. And so that business did not die off. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to increase. The military is not affected by this. But to put it in perspective, the airlines have lost 95% of their revenue at this point, and it's, we're starting to see it here, the ridership starting to tick up a little bit. I mean, it's kind of silly to say it doubled or tripled, but it has on certain days, but that means it's gone from 5 to 15 people on a plane. So that's still not very big. But what I'm understanding is the numbers are similar across most of the United States on the domestic front. The international flights are not going to be back in any kind of normal fashion in quite a while. But what that means to the airlines is it's a great time to paint an airplane because the airplanes are all down. And it's a horrible time to paint an airplane because they don't have any revenue. So that's the struggle that they have to deal with. And so, yeah, they're choosing not to paint them now because it's an optional maintenance. I mean, where you've got major checks that are mandated by the FAA, those they have to do if they want that airplane to fly. But it doesn't matter what the paint looks like. They can still fly it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think you'll see a slow time for all the painting across the country.
Scott, you said that you had a 185% increase, but I don't know what that equates to in dollars to the city.
So in February, the parking billed for that month was $43,993. For April, the parking bill was $128,885.
And that 128,000, based on projections of where we are now, ought
Yeah.
to be fairly consistent over the next several months.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Stark? Okay.
Thank you much.
All right, new business, regular items. First up, we need to elect a chair and vice chair for the coming year. So I'll entertain any nominations.
Is this something that's a part of that we need to do on a yearly
Yes.
basis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crickets. Is this because nobody wants to volunteer? Say again? You may if you choose. That is your choice. All right. We have one nomination for chair. Do we have any other nominations?
How much longer do you have to serve?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I'm in, that's weird. My term does not end until March of '22.
So you've got almost 2 years.
Yes, I have almost
Okay.
two. And here's a frightening thought for you.
Could you reappoint yourself?
No, I could,
Okay.
but there's no assurance the council would approve it. This has not been unanimous, ever. So there may be an escape for me. So.
So what is your, what is your desire with respect to the chairmanship?
I'm comfortable with this because I feel like we are really starting to develop as a group. I like this interaction and interchange, and I've really come to see that things come up that other people aren't thinking of, like the council. The council has a lot on its plate right now, and this group is focused on the air center. Now, we're not always obviously going to agree on everything. We all got that. But the beauty of this is I like these discussions, and I want to encourage them. I want to, are there things we need to do differently? Are there things we need to do better? Are there things we need to stay the same? And I like this, the work that we're going to be doing on the whole Section 5 of the ordinances, where we completely rewrote that. That's a cleanup effort that's needed to be done for like probably 20 years. But this group is the one that's made it happen. So I like where we're at. And I'm comfortable with this format, and I'm open to any discussion. I don't think any of you guys, you're not going to make me uncomfortable by asking hard questions. So I'm good with it.
Well, I would, if you're comfortable with it, I would second Jim's.
And let me say this too. I think one of the key things we need to develop towards is that I appreciate Ms. Call being on the board here, because I'd like to see us, myself included, eventually rotate people, new people in, people off. Not everybody at once, because then things are chaotic. But I'd like to see us do some, how do you say, structured, or that's the wrong term, but deliberate refreshment of people. We don't have term limits here, so we're a little more flexible. But I like the idea of, yeah, succession plans. So we need to be looking at that too. So, all right. Do I have any other willing victims? All right. So we'll have a voice vote. Kintai for chairman, a yes or aye approves that, a no or nay rejects it. All those in favor of Kintai as chairman signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none. Passes unanimously. Now, vice chair. All right, we have any volunteers? You can self-nominate.
I nominate Riley Armstrong.
All right, Riley Armstrong. We got any others? I got a second by Mr. Burris. Actually, we don't need seconds for nominations, but we'll take it. Anybody else want to jump up? Okay. All those in favor of Mr. Riley Armstrong as vice chair signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. I tell you, this is the most awkward thing I do, and I don't like it. All right. Mr. Morris, tell us the latest on 57 G Street. Lots of interesting stuff coming up.
Good morning. As you know, we are in the process of trying to acquire about 11.5 acre site on G Street, which is located right to the north of the terminal. And so the process basically, because this is owned by the feds, is that we've made a request through the GSA, General Services Administration, to have that released to us. We've had those discussions. Mark and I called up GSA and talked to our contact in Denton, Texas, and they explained there's a couple of different ways to get this process, or get this property. One of them is to ask for it for free. That can happen, but it's really tied to very limited public uses. And they really don't like it because they have to come down and check to make sure every 3 years that we're actually doing what we said we were going to do with the property, that we didn't over a weekend in Home Depot do something different to that property. One of the other ways is to basically buy it from them. And so there is a negotiated process. We have put in a letter of interest to purchase it. What that does, though, is by their rules, GSA is now required to notify all agencies within the federal government that there's 11.5 acres available at the Roswell Air Center across the street from our terminal. And so we had to drop a letter off by June 4th, just kind of start that process. And so we have done that. We've also indicated that we wanted, as a generic, just kind of a placeholder, we'd use it for long-term parking for the terminal, because that gets us into the public use for the airport for right now. But we have gotten a notice that HUD put out they did through their system. Once they heard that there's 11.5 acres out there, they then notified their system that this could be used for affordable housing in the future, that it's available. So we're not too jazzed about that either. Neither is the Homeless Coalition. It doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, but we're pretty sure. But that's just what they have to do according to their rules. And so right now, we're kind of just waiting to see who else turns in any kind of letters of interest. The GSA was very supportive. They helped us through all this initial part. They actually were, I'm with the government and I can help. It was actually a good discussion. And so the idea here is, it can be very quick. It would not necessarily, the asking price, again, is a negotiated thing. I'm not sure what they use for their prices. They just come up with a number. They send you a letter and says, do you want to buy this? Here's the amount. And if we don't like it, we cross it, literally, we cross it out and put in a number we do like and send it back to them. And that's how this will work. So it's a little strange, but we're still in the process of trying to get this separated out. It's a good piece of property. It'll be platted out, and it's right across the street from the airport and has all sorts of good uses you guys can come up with. And you did that last time we met about what else could actually go out there. So that's basically where we're at with G Street.
Can you tell us what the limited uses are if it's free?
It was things like animal shelters, homeless shelters, educational systems, things along those lines.
Okay.
You know, public benefit, that's the,
Right, okay.
so, I mean, they're not bad uses, but, I mean, I think most of you guys were talking about other uses that would be more directly supporting of the terminal. That was always why we were always interested in trying to grab this thing if we could get it from the Job Corps folks, so. But it'll kind of work its way through as we get through this.
So if HUD were to be successful, how much development needs to go in there as far as infrastructure for homes, as an example?
There's actually water and sewer available all around it. So there's the support. If somebody wanted to do a small subdivision in there, they could. I think that their people would then, but they would also do a needs assessment and viability assessment of the property. And when they were done, they would have the same, I'm pretty sure they would come to the same conclusions, the ones I've talked to, that all the services are up here, so why would you put them, you know, any kind of facility down there, 7 miles away? So I'm not too worried about it. When I first saw it, it was a little bit of until I understood what happens, because they have to have a reply in as well by June 4th, just like we do.
So it has to be a realistic intent on their part, just from an economics as far as where they want to put in a subdivision, and when they do their analysis of everything, it's absolutely the wrong place.
I would agree. I would come to the same conclusion. And we're also held to that. I mean, they're going to be looking at us. This process is going to be something you guys are going to have to figure out what you want to do with this piece of property, ultimately. But GSA is very, very willing to work with us And, you know, in their world, it's only 11 and a half acres. You know, us, it's a pretty big piece of dirt. To them, it's like, where's Roswell? And so they were very supportive, and we told them, this is kind of what we're thinking about, you know, and eventually a hotel and maybe, or doing something like that. And they were like, that's a good idea. You know, works in conjunction with the terminal across the street. It makes sense. So I think it'll be just something that we have to follow federal rules. We'll meet their timelines, and we'll see what happens at the other end of the tunnel. But I think it's
And-
positive.
And what do you all anticipate the timeline to be?
Probably I think within, it sounded like mere months. I mean, we've already created the legal description for them. We've already have a plat ready to go. We have all those kinds of things. And if they don't have really any replies other than us, then they're just talking to us. They've got a pretty standard form for response, you know,
Okay.
and it's just paperwork going back and forth between us and GSA.
Okay.
Can we get the letters that we got from GSA, the HUD one and then the other one, and make copies and send those out to the commissioners, just so everybody can see what they look like? Kind of gives you an idea of what, that, to be honest with you, when I saw the letter, it kind of took me aback, because it was like homeless shelter, and I'm like, wait a minute, that isn't what we were thinking of. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Burris.
I just wanted to throw a couple things out there. One, we're still dealing with airport property, or surrounding, right? So there's different restrictions there, and at the end of the day, there's nothing that says we have to change our zoning rules. Is that correct, Bill?
For what? I'm sorry, I missed.
Zoning, we don't have to change the zoning for that property.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to. There's
No,
nothing
no,
that says
no,
we
no.
have to
It's
change.
industrial now. It's
Yeah,
all
it's-
industrial.
It's I-2 right now, is it not?
Yeah,
And-
so I thought
and
I'd
my-
throw that out there.
You can do anything out there right now, I mean, essentially.
Yeah,
But if it
And-
were go to a residential use, yes, you would have to then go through a rezoning, and it wouldn't make any, it would violate all of the rules of rezoning.
so we don't, essentially, we don't have to redo the zoning, is the question. Okay,
No.
thank you.
And then the other piece of that from the FAA side, which you were talking about, is compatible land use. And normally, residential, schools, hospitals, those type of things are not compatible that close to an airport. So that would be support for you not changing the zone to allow this development. So I think we'll have a lot of support.
They have to stay out of the old runway protection zone concept with, of clustering people at the end of your runways. So we're on track and everything's good.
So, Bill, if the city buys this, two questions. One, do we have a lot more flexibility in what we can use it for if we buy it? And that those uses wouldn't be scrutinized by the FAA or GSA or anybody then?
GSA would love for us to buy it because then they don't have to worry about those uses. It's our property.
So we've got a lot of flexibility if we buy it, as opposed to having them give it to us.
Right, it's that part, that if they still have strings, then they have their own rules they have to follow, and like I said, they do visits, and so and they don't like that either, apparently. They would rather just sell it and be done with it.
So the next question is, if GSA sells that, in general, government entities have to have documentation as to value on that. They can't just say, okay, we're going to give it to you for $200 or $2,000. So the time involved in going through that process is likely more than a couple of months if they have to have documentation.
I'm not sure what their standards are. I mean, I've dealt with the feds and Park Service, buying Park Service land, and I had to get an appraiser, but it was a commercial appraiser, and I think we've talked about that one for the solid waste plant in Ruidoso. And that one actually took a little bit more time because of the location, but this one here, maybe they've got their own system, I don't know. It's been 12 years since we did that. I don't know what maybe the rules haven't changed. It may be a little bit longer, but it didn't sound like it was going to be a multi-year deal on this.
So now we just need to wait for GSA to say, okay, we want to sell this to you for X amount of dollars.
See what they send us.
Okay.
So let me build on that. I think what Commissioner Kunkel raised. So we're expecting them to say a price. They will offer it to us for a price. We don't have to come up with one. They're going to make suggest a price that we do not have to accept. Do I have that correct?
His words were essentially, we're going to send you a letter. It'll have an amount on it, and if you like it, fine. If you don't, cross it out, put in the number that you want, and send it back to me.
Okay, and do they tell us how much time we would have to get back to them?
Oh, I didn't ask, but I would assume a couple months. It'd really be
Okay.
up to us.
Okay, because what I would like to do is bring that to this group, and this group chew on it and prepare the counter offer. I think the council and the city manager may want to confirm it, but I'd like to see this group take the lead in establishing a price. Now, where it gets a little complicated is this is now kind of done in the open, because as opposed to the Aragon sale, which was a private negotiation, this one now is out in the open. So this is a different dynamic. Yeah, Councilor Stubbs, I'm going to pick on you for a second. What do you think of that idea? I mean, of this group coming up with a tentative position for the city, and then the council thumbs up or not? And you got to come up to a microphone. I'm not looking for a commitment. I just want to know if you have a better idea.
I don't have any problem with that, Mr. Mayor, but let me ask Mr. Morris, do we have to purchase by ordinance?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, we don't know.
I know we have to sell by ordinance. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if we have to purchase by ordinance, so in that regard, you're going to need to involve council more, plus the process.
That's a good action item for next month. We need to know what we have to do as far as purchasing.
Okay.
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Counselor. That's a good point. So, and then the other question that we've kind of struggled with a little bit is, what pot of money do we want to use? And Mr. Stark has raised a concerned question about if we use airport enterprise funds, does that bring the FAA into the mix? And you want to jump in on that, Mr. Bleth? Where's Mr. Stark, whoever?
So I believe it does. Just from my discussions with the FAA, they actually called me the same day that we got the notification, the GSA stuff, and they called me and said, are you guys going to do this? Because we need to know right now if you're going to do it with your money. And I said, let me get back to you, because I don't know. I said, at this point, there's not a plan to, but that could change. So they're very interested in it. They do want to know if we're going to do it with our money. So yes, I do believe as soon as we touch it with airport revenues, it falls under their jurisdiction, because it's bought with airport revenues. So it would have to have their release as well to sell it. But when I talk to them about our plans, they like it.
See, that's one of the things that, just kind of for this commission, I'm concerned about the city's budget, the general fund money, to be able to make a purchase. And we can discuss at length where we're at, but the city manager is going through a very serious budget adjustment for the next fiscal year, cutting everywhere he can. So I'm not sure the general fund could handle any type of property purchase. That really only leaves us the enterprise funds, and I don't see water or sanitation legitimately purchasing it, and it kind of falls back to the airport enterprise fund to be the purchaser. But I'm not sure that's a bad thing, because even if we didn't use airport funds, if we wanted to do something there, the FAA is going to take a look at it anyway, isn't it? Because it's in the ALP right now.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It is not. But they, regardless, because of its proximity to the airport, they will take a look at it, looking at compatible land uses based on that proximity. And then what they're going to look at is whether the city of Roswell, as the sponsor of the airport, is protecting its airport. So that's where the compatible land use comes in. So even if it were private property already, or any other status, they would be looking at what projects the city is allowing to be built there. So if we're going, oh yeah, that housing development is great, and they're going, no, it's too close, that would be an issue. And so I believe, because of its proximity to the airport, and I would like to hear the FAA's answer to that, but I believe they would give us the answer that it is most likely too close.
Okay.
And then it would be incumbent upon us to say, no, the zoning is I-2, and that's the way we're going to keep it. You can't build a residential area there.
Okay. Well, what do you, I'd like you guys to pitch in on the idea of using airport enterprise funds.
I think as much as we can keep the government out of stuff, my opinion is we're better off. But if there aren't funds available in the general fund, then we may not have any choice. That's, once we know what the number is, I would suggest that that goes to Joe Nebb and Joe, can we buy this with general funds or not? Yes or no?
Okay. Do you think the FAA will like that answer? We could say to them, we're waiting to see how much to decide whether or not it's the enterprise fund or city general fund, do you think?
I think at this point, my take on it was they would prefer for us to buy it out of the city general fund so that they don't have any involvement. Again, they would have involvement in the land use issue anyway, no matter what. But then they don't have to review the resale of it and approve that. So it's just less work for them, because I think the way they're looking at it is real simple. They support our ideas of what we want to do with it. And so if we can just go and do it and they don't have to be involved, it's a lot less work for them. So I think what we're dealing with is really process, and Bud's right. It's a cleaner process if they're not involved, and I think they think the same way. So it's not an unfriendly process if we do use the airport funds and have to go through that. But I think we'll have the same result, but it's going to be a little more complicated.
So it may be worthwhile just to ask Joe Nebb, can we afford $50,000 to go buy this? The answer is either yes or no. And if they come back and it's 80,000 and we can't get them down to 50, then we know what we have to do.
As it stands right now, I don't owe them anything on this project. If we decide to use airport revenue to do so, then I need to notify them. But if we buy it with general fund money, then I don't owe them anything.
Let me do this. Let's talk to Mr. Fuentes. He's Administrative Services, and he's got budget and finance. Let's ask him to participate in this discussion in the June meeting, okay? Does that sound good? Because you raise valid points, and the problem is we just don't know. Right now we haven't got a clue where we're at, and so I'd like this to do that discussion, and then maybe after we buy it, we can convince Air Sale to build a warehouse.
Mr. Fuentes may be able to give us a number, so whatever we come up with is a moot point. So maybe we don't need any involvement from us to do that. If there's a number there that meets budgetary constraints, and we know the city wants to buy it, and we think that's a good idea, then offer less and see what they do.
I agree. This has not been discussed in detail with the council, though. We did discuss it, I think, in the closed session Oops, I can't say that. Anyway, it has been discussed in some format, but not in detail. And I think the real reason is because we're still waiting to get past this HUD issue and then look at what is the suggested price. So, okay. So my takeaway here, and you folks tell me if I've got this correct, is that we are going to come back and revisit this transaction next month with additional information. By then, we'll possibly have heard from GSA a proposed price. In any case, we would have Mr. Fuentes discuss with us the potential for general funds usage to make a purchase, if it's even at all possible at all. Is that, I'm seeing heads nod. Mr. Stark, does that sound doable to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And in the meantime, do we need like a market analysis? Do we need to have kind of a number in our heads?
That's a so they're going to come up with an offer.
Well, we've had a recent appraisal in the neighborhood there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another point I'm a little bit concerned about, because I don't really want to pay what the appraised price was for the Aragon property.
I don't think,
I'm sorry.
well.
I don't.
You're talking about, and Mr. Kunkel can correct me if I'm wrong, but really you're talking about two different types of properties. And I'm working on a deal that required me to put together a market analysis that all happened to be from the relief route south to the airport. That's where I focused it. It focused on vacant land. There are two recent sales of $8,000 an acre. I would say that that's probably pretty close to the value of this property, which would be, let's just say, $96,000. And I can't say that location plays any more of a role in that. It could perhaps, but there are a number of properties that, not a number, there are a few properties that are listed for sale in the 5,000 range and have not sold. They're not in as good a location, but you still encompass kind of that same area. But in my mind, certainly it should be around 8 to 10 per acre, based on what I've seen in the last month. So, because you got to have an idea of what, when they throw that number out, and if it's 20,000 an acre, I'm going to say it's not worth that.
Uh-oh.
But it's got to.
Commissioner Kunkel, you got a different opinion?
Well, the land that you're talking about, and I don't know where they are, but industrial land throughout southeastern New Mexico, typically, unless it's of no use anywhere, is not going to sell for 8 to 10,000. It just doesn't do that.
Other than the two that have.
Okay, and those are industrial sites?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so are they as functionally usable and readily usable as this piece
no,
of dirt?
in that here on G Street, we have utilities that are available. One of these that is sold at 8,000 has no improvements. It actually is in a low-lying area, needs to be brought up by anybody who would be the buyer. The other does have utilities available, but I don't see this property as being any different really than the other two.
Okay.
And I don't see it as having more value, but I don't, you know, sometimes you just play the role of common sense to somebody that says, do you want 12 acres? It's 11, but let's say 12. For 96,000, that's not a bad number.
Okay.
And I think we can speculate all day long. I really would suggest we find out from Mr. Fuentes whether the city's got some funds that can be used, just use a number of 100,000,
Okay.
that can be used to buy this in general funds as opposed to the airport funds, and then see what their number is. And if their number comes back less than that, then offer them half of that.
Okay. I like it. Anything else on this we want to jump
Bill,
in?
would we be able to send a preemptive letter to GSA regarding HUD's interest, saying that it's not compatible zoning for what they intend?
We can have a letter ready. I don't like messing around with their process or, you know, throwing a hand grenade ahead of time. I think we can put all that together and be ready. But let's just wait 2 weeks and see what, you know, who else turns in something.
How long is this interest period? Is there a date certain?
June 4th. In 2
So
weeks, basically.
that will have passed by the time we meet again.
So next time we meet, we'll know who else, what are the other parties, if any, are involved, and I'd be very surprised. The HUD thing is just part of their process. I don't think that there's anybody seriously going to.
Now, there was one other little tidbit there, and I remember in the letter from GSA, they listed uses that it could be for free. The last one has me intrigued because it says airport. And it cites a statute, but I have not had a chance to look it up or talk to Mr. Patterson about it or anything like that. Do we have any idea what that, quote, airport option is? I mean, this is kind of redundant, but
I think that's their list, their typical list, and as a public use, it would be considering an extension of the airport property that you have now. If somebody wanted to make a bigger airport, that's what they would use.
so, but if we could get it for free,
But we don't want them to control it.
So I haven't looked at it either, and, you know, saying that, I don't know if that's what it refers to, but I would assume that normally it refers to aeronautical activity. So we're talking about runways and taxiways and that
Okay.
sort of thing, and
That's-
there's no way we're doing that on the other side of Earl Cummings.
all right, I got you. All right, well, let's take a look at it and let's
Yeah,
figure it out. But-
absolutely.
And you're right, Commissioner, I'm just being cheap. All right. Anything else on this one? Otherwise, we'll move on to 9. And we'll keep Mr. Morris. The platting.
The platting. This is an interesting process.
Can you pull the microphone just a little closer, will you? Just,
I don't like
I'm
these
getting
things.
old, and I had a birthday recently, and I'm really old.
I know. The platting process, Mark and I had a chance to get together and kind of kick this thing around a little bit. And the intent is to see what else we could do with respect to starting to break up some of the chunks of dirt out there, if that would be of benefit. And our conclusion was afterwards, it may be a little premature for us with this reason. We typically only do that, one, when we know somebody's coming in and needs a specific configuration of a widget on the ground. And so prematurely cutting the ones that we do have into smaller blocks maybe ahead of time, because maybe they need a third of that, or, you know, 1/3 of these things. And so that was our concern. The other part is, so maybe we should be also looking more at infrastructure needs in real detail to help facilitate the development of those properties. We know where they generally, people are going to want to start somewhere in the Hobson and the Cummins Loop and that kind of area. But we also have, I mean, basically have a road that's unimproved, but it's not intended for heavy traffic, not really. And we've got a railroad that could use some help, and possibly there are some options with future spurs if somebody really wanted to do this off of the existing line. And so maybe the idea is we spend some time on looking at some of those issues and then coming back and saying, okay, if these are options here with some of those improvements to bring traffic in, get product out, maybe that we go through that process first, and then we look at cutting up properties to maybe help facilitate that design or those components in the future. So instead of cutting it up and then trying to figure out how the utilities would fit in, kind of maybe we should be really looking at it differently, looking at our utilities and making sure that all our infrastructure needs are taken care of. We're doing that with our water, we're doing it with the electric. We really should be doing it much more so between Hobson and 285 and making sure that it's the type of road that can handle whatever comes in and can go out. And the same with the rail spur. And Mark's had an idea about, well, what if we had some other areas that another spur user wouldn't mind tapping into that line and coming off. And so looking at these first and saying, okay, or we just say this is the pattern we've got and we'll go with it from there. But we think we'd like to take some time to look at those other utilities and needs in more detail. We've actually got some tentative plans from Lewis on roadway expansion cross sections going out to 285. And so let's take a look at some of that stuff. Is that going to handle, or how is Hobson ever going to connect to 285 without a gooseneck, so it's not a 45-degree angle looking back at you for our heavy traffic that wants to come in and come out of that place? It gets it's crazy enough in a car. And so we think what we'd like to do is take a look at the infrastructure in more detail and then start to look at the pattern. And then we can come back and say, okay, we need to do something with this chunk of dirt and this one over here, yes, let's leave this one alone. But I think once that's out of the way, we would feel better. We think that would be a better approach long-term. And that's kind of where we're at.
Well, we do have two sales potential two sales. We have the sale to Aragon and the sale to us. And looking at the G Street, that there's a sliver that is already owned by the city off of, G Street, where G Street swoops over and meets Earl Cummings. There's a section right there that is already city property, but it's platted, so that would have to be included in, if we get this, in that plat.
And we can do some of the minor things, and actually I think one of the things that we could do right now are checking out the road grid.
Yes.
And so just confirming, do we really want to keep this as a road, or do we need to do this as a road, or should it not be a road, and just redraw the line?
Well, like Challenger isn't platted as a road.
No, it just...
And that has me a little bit, I don't know, should I be concerned or not? I don't know.
Well, and this G Street, we made sure with that subdivision that that particular part of the road that cuts across there is a right-of-way. It's called out in the plat. It was just a strip that went right through the property before. This sale will also include the replacement of the right-of-way into the city's inventory of streets, even though it's not particularly long, just in that one section there. But
Right,
we just want to look at the roads and the infrastructure and make sure the patterns are all good. We can do that pretty quickly, make some recommendations to y'all, and then we can start to look at what other things need to happen from there.
Okay. Commissioners, are there questions, comments?
I agree with Mr. Morris on that. One thing that I would suggest, though, is also look at the existing tenant leases where there is no defined legal description for that lease. And because there's no defined legal description, then that would require, like Air Sale, to go out there with city staff and a surveyor and say, well, here's what we need to use to do this. I mean, we have to accommodate those people that have been leasing for a long time. We have to. But that would if we've got the money, we're all short of money, but if there's money at the airport fund or something that can do that, that would be a reasonable use of surveyors' time to go do that, and then we can fill in just blank spots of big rectangles out there that are not legally bound to anything.
We did talk about the lease agreements, the lease areas, and you guys got, Mark, you want to?
Yeah, currently within our, we have exhibits that we put within our leases that kind of draw out those lines that are within their leasehold, just with overhead pictures and drawing a line on it. And typically they tie to roads or existing fences, so they're not kind of a mystery of where their leasehold is.
Other questions or comments?
I don't think we have to decide anything on this right now.
No.
And if there's more research that needs to be done, then let's do it and not spend any more money than we have to right now.
Yes, I agree with that. I am concerned, though, eventually we will have to plat this. And my concern is that this is something that we're stuck with from 50 years ago. This platting is, I am assuming, original stuff, and it's got serious flaws. So let's keep looking at it, but I don't want it to go another 50 years. That's a trite saying. I shouldn't have said it that way, but.
And Mr. Mayor, we can come back next month easily, tell you what we're doing and what we're looking at, and probably just try to get the pattern all set up, and then those critical areas that need to be platted, we can go ahead and do today, if it's determined something has to happen. And I mean, we've already started that process. So,
I mean, I'm looking at some of this, like the Wells Street that is a complete mess. I mean, it's the street was never platted as a street, and we're now in negotiations. And then part of it is to build another connecting road, and how would we plat? So that, to me, that whole effort there needs to be, that will have to be platted.
but we'd like to make sure that we've got, that all the things, before we draw those lines, all the big widgets and things that we may want in there in the future, do that first, and then we can draw our lines around them. We know where you want to go, and I agree with you.
Okay.
Just bear with me if you could, just a little bit longer on that one.
Well, it's not unusual, as you know, Bill, to replat, but it's rarely done without a reason. So having said that, I think the areas that there is cause for a reason to do it, then you do it. But as a whole, I don't know that it's necessary to do, because you may end up having to replat it again. And so generally, it's just not done unless there's cause.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't preclude us from, because what we do now, when we have different customers, we kind of map out what they need.
Right.
And if that needs to be part of a legal description, the survey's done, and that's what we do. So we don't, like you said, we don't need to do it until we need to do it.
Right.
The mayor made a good observation. Basically, the southeast corner of the GSA tract, which is city-owned, at some point, that whole tract needs to be replatted. Well, if we're providing the plat to GSA, and they're going to give us that legal description, they got to write up a legal based on that description, surveyed description, then that's something that either has been done or needs to be done. And you can put that little city-owned tract on the same plat, call it Tract 1 and Tract 2, and the only thing that the GSA is going to sell us is Tract 1, the legal description for that. So, yeah, that needs to be done to accommodate that purchase. But if we don't have to do something right now,
Okay.
I wouldn't spend the money.
All right, then what I'm hearing is let's keep discussing this and reviewing it next month.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank
All right, next up, item 10, additional tear down pad. Mr. Bleth.
Good morning. So this is, we talked last month about a timeline for Crunch Pad. And so we all know that we need to have it operational January 1st, so we kind of work backwards from there based on that requirement of having an operational Crunch Pad. So if we look, by July, we're planning on having an invitation to bid and an RFI to present to the group. And neither one of those require legal or city council to input on those. So those are things that we put out. We put out a specification of what we want, and that will drive the ITB. And then with the RFI, this is talking about kind of the big picture of operating a Crunch Pad at the Air Center. So we would expect within, I think we're July 20th sometime is when we'd have our AC meeting. If there was revisions that we need to do, we should be able to accommodate that for advertisement by October 1st. Within 2 months, I would expect that we would be able to decide on what path we need to take. Currently, we have 2 companies that are interested in building Crunch Pads and doing land leases with the city in the area that we talked about before. That would have no expense to the city of the construction of those. So as those firm up in the next few months, we should know if we even need to go down this path at all. But we are prepared to complete this path if we need to. So once we decide on what path we're going to go on that, as far as if we're building ourselves or somebody else is building it, we'll ensure construction begins by November 1st. Talking to some construction companies on this project, it's about a month project to do this. So we have 2 months built in for weather. Is there any questions on that timeline? And right now, this is a timeline.
So the 2 companies, I mean, the reason that we're having to do this is because we're taking away Air Sales Crunch Pad.
Correct.
Okay, so the 2 companies that want to do this, is one of those either Air Sale or Air Sale is going to have control over one of those pads?
Neither of them are Air Sale.
Okay, so how does Air Sale get hold?
Well, they could be a third person that could be interested in doing it, or they work with one of the 2 that are.
So these would be privately owned Crunch Pads that would pay a land lease to the city, and the privately owned Crunch Pads would lease those out to whoever wanted to use them.
Most likely, I would assume their business model would be they would do crunching for hire. So AirSale would, I think the arrangement AirSale uses now with Custom is they basically sell them what's left after they've parted it out. So they buy it for X amount of dollars, and they do, Custom does all the work, tearing it apart, and they get whatever they get for the metal.
So as long as Air Sale's happy with it, I could care less.
Okay.
But Air Sale needs to be happy with it, because we're taking their Crunch Pad away.
We want them to be happy too.
Okay.
Okay. Other comments, question on this one? Okay, we'll continue with this one next month also then. All right, now we get to the fun stuff. And just to be mildly difficult, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Commissioner Riley while I step out for a second.
Okay. Scott, go
Go ahead.
anytime you're
I
ready.
was gonna grab some paper. So I'll start off with apologizing for getting that to you guys so late last night. I've been working on it for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's one of those things that you've got to focus on, and I've had so many crazy interruptions over the last few weeks that I have had very little time to work on it. So again, I apologize for getting it to you late. But I'll also say that what I have here, I started with the minimum standards that currently exist in the ordinance, and compared it to what the FAA advisory circular says on minimum standards, and we are mostly in compliance, if not completely in compliance with that anyway. So it really comes down to modifying these things to bring it up to what we want to be doing in the 2020s versus the 1950s. So that's what I was doing. If you look through it, I've got the markup on the handouts that you guys have. It's broken up into different sections of aircraft sales, and then it's basically by activities. So aircraft sales, airframe and power plant repair facilities, aircraft rental, flight training, line services, specialized aviation service operations, which we actually already had a section that was similar to this, but the nomenclature needed to be updated to be modern, and so I did that. Aircraft charter and specialized commercial flying services. And these are not particularly titles or subjects that are outlined all specifically in the advisory circular, but these were what were in our minimum standards and still very similar to what we do. And then it ends with multiple service, where you combine the different services that are listed, and then subleases. And so I put them all back in, and I added through the fence operations, which we actually don't do, and I don't believe we want to do, but I, in the past, have gotten a few questions about through the fence, so I thought this being a public document should cover that topic as well, so I added it on the end. So to start with, if you look at the red spots, those are the things that I changed. You'll see the markouts where we changed names, and I cleaned up a little bit of the language. The way these are formatted for each activity are all very similar, A through F as subtopics within the topic. And I felt like reading through them that they really were in pretty good shape already, so I didn't change more than I had to. So you won't see much change in the aircraft sales. And then, let's see, when you go on to airframe and power plant repair facilities, one of the things, I was kind of trying to look and see if it had that as well on airplane. No, it doesn't. Okay, so one of the things that I saw was common throughout these activities is the operation times. There was a lot of an hour before sunrise to an hour after sunset, and that may have been appropriate in the 1950s. It's not what, for example, AvFlight is doing right now. It's not what anybody who's doing flying lessons is doing out there. So for now, I highlighted it. That's what you'll see in the yellow. The highlights are the things that I want to talk about and say, is that really what we want to be saying in here? I think something closer to what we're actually doing is probably the way to go, but we also want to maintain high standards. so that we don't have a fly-by-night company come in that won't meet any standards. I'm not an advocate of lowering the bar because we're not, because somebody's not doing it, but I want it to make sense. I want it to be a standard that keeps a high standard, yet at the same time makes it practical for a business to do business in Roswell. We don't want to have nobody show up because they won't do our standards in this area. Then the others that you see, the codes, I've highlighted them. I don't believe we can probably delete those is what I'm thinking. I don't think they're going to apply quite the same way, but for now I just highlighted them. And then you look at the number C, and in a lot of them we talk about providing sufficient equipment, supplies, availability of parts. I think that's appropriate for an airframe and power plant repair business. That doesn't seem to be outlandish there, but it may not quite fit in another one. So those are things that were repetitive throughout the activities that I wanted to question whether they were appropriate in those activities.
Scott, wouldn't that be under their capabilities list?
Couldn't hear you.
Wouldn't that be under their capabilities list to operate on an airplane?
When does what?
Capabilities list, what you just listed here, wouldn't that be under their capabilities list to work on the airplane? We start talking about equipment, tools.
Yeah, it talks about the proper ratings and all that kind of stuff for FAA. So that, really I want to refer back to that stuff.
No, I mean, how are you going to, some of these things, how are you going to enforce? Like,
Oh, how are you going to?
working after.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think our leases do that. I think that's where it has to be.
see?
It has to be in the lease.
yeah, so
And so,
it's simple.
yeah, I agree. And that's the question is, do we want, some of this type of stuff in here, or do we want it in the lease management document?
I'd prefer it was in the lease, because then we could rely on our management team to take care of that, because they're going to study each business that's coming out.
Yeah, and the one thing to remember with this is that this is what we're going to hand out to someone when they're proposing to bring a business to our
Right.
airport. So it's kind of we can throw out lease management documents as well. Those are public documents. We can throw out our rules and regulations and those things, and we want people to be familiar with those things. But you get asked for these, and because then they begin to understand what standard they're held to. But yeah, the enforcement would be in the lease.
Yeah, so see, this for a site selector, not for myself, I'm going to rent land or operate a business, because this is going to things that really you can't enforce
Right.
at all, zero, and I really don't have to show it to you. Some of these capability lists, things like that. I mean, we could talk about it, but as it changes, or our business models would change, and we go to training, tools, materials, those types of things, it would change this whole dynamic.
Yeah.
So you're just not going to be able to enforce it. So I wouldn't put it in writing. Just a thought.
Sure. And that's kind of where I'm coming from too, is, what things do we want to carry over from these old ones? How do we maintain that high level of expectation from our tenants and our businesses that are out there, so that we have a quality facility as an airport, and not overburden those businesses to the point that they don't want to do business with us.
I agree.
Scott, I've noticed that on where you have deleted to be negotiated prior to lease, and it follows through on different areas. So do you really want to delete that, or do you want to say may be renegotiated? or may be negotiated.
So I'm open-minded to different
I
language.
mean, what was your thought process?
So the one thing that I was thinking of is, it was really kind of, I'm open to different language, that the negotiation process was a foregone conclusion. So it didn't do a lot to say that you were going to go negotiate a lease, because if you're going to require a lease, of course you're going to negotiate one. And again, I'm open-minded to other language. The thing that I wanted to put in there was really more in relation to the airport master plan and where we put things, because those are the things I get more conflict on when we're talking about putting a business in a particular building, or putting a business on a particular piece of land where they want to build a building. So in the end, my thoughts there are, okay, what you're proposing to me, where does it go well on the airport? And I say, here's where it goes. And of course, that's part of the negotiation too. And they say, well, I don't like it there, I want it here. But you have a completely different idea for this part of the airport. And so, you can always change your mind if it's a good enough reason to do so. But I think the more we have our airport planned out in terms of the layout and where different things go, the better they'll function going into the future, and the more sellable it is to new businesses coming into the future, where we group those businesses together in the right places. You keep the GA in a particular area, you keep the commercial maintenance in a different area. Right now, it's fairly wide open. So that was the idea. It wasn't to exclude the idea of negotiation. It was really, in my mind, the negotiation's a foregone conclusion. You're going to do that when you go into a lease.
So you're basically saying that any company's going to have the inherent idea that we're going to negotiate what we need to negotiate.
Yes.
They already know that.
It didn't need to be
And
stated.
it did need to be said.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question about the specialized commercial flying service. And where I'm going with this one is the air ambulance. That's not listed as one of the options here, and I don't know if it should be, because to me that's, other than firefighting, that's the only other really, I think, pertinent on this list, because I don't think there's crop dusters out there, banner towing, I don't know how much aerial survey or photography we do anymore, and I don't know about pipeline patrol, but air ambulance I know is out there, so I was wondering if that should be there. And then the other thing I was wondering, in paragraph A, it says a specialized commercial flying services operator is a person. Is it a person or is it an organization? Because once again, I'm thinking of the air ambulance.
It could be a person. I mean, if you're looking at a guy who does aerial photography, that's not likely to be a big organization.
No, but
But then we might could change that language to say a person or organization. I think that would make sense.
what I'm thinking here is that we're looking at this, we're just kind of throwing, like I'm just throwing some stuff out at you. What I would like to see is if all of us can take a little time between now and obviously the next meeting in June and get you specific comments on what we think should be done differently. But I don't want to, I'm not trying to stop this discussion because I think it helps us to have a general discussion about it.
No, I would like that. I was really hoping that I would get this out sooner to you guys so that we could do that today, but it just didn't happen. But so today I just kind of wanted to lay out how we got it laid out, and it made sense to not change it looking at the advisory circular. We fit pretty well in there the way it already is. There are just a few minor things that needed to be done, and I did those. And then otherwise, it's looking at, like Commissioner Burris was talking about what fits for our businesses and for our airport, and Kevin and I were talking about that a while ago too, that if we do some of these things that are currently in there, it's going to change the business model that they have. So we need to modernize and say, in the 50s, there was a lot of things that came along, and, folks come out to go take flying lessons just as the sun's coming up because the air is wonderful at that time in the world, but that's not the way it's necessarily done nowadays. You don't have a scheduled lesson, every day. So to have someone constantly in that office ready to jump in a plane and go fly is not practical. Businesses can't survive that way. So nowadays it's by appointment. So, that's just one example of how our current minimum standards do not work for a company the way they operate in Roswell these days. That type of setup may still work somewhere else, but it doesn't work very well for us.
So I've already put for our potential agenda items for next June a review of this.
Yep.
I go back, and I'm not being critical, that's not my point, but I'm going back to last month's meeting when I did maybe rant or rave a little bit about the lack of information prior to the meeting, and I think, and this is one of them, we need a chance to absorb it, so
Absolutely.
I think putting it on the June agenda, which gives all of us a chance to look at it. And I don't want to necessarily stop what you're doing right now because you're actually showing us or pointing out what you've done. But I've got it on the potential for next month.
I agree. Now, help me here because I've kind of forgotten a little bit. Mr. Holloman's map, if you will, about the different colors. And, oops, that was cute. Hey, God. All right, so this is the yellow or the orange?
I don't have that in front of me, but let me go look.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't bring that with me.
Oh,
It would be,
okay. Okay, so we're now at so we've actually got the blue, the green, and I guess I have to call that salmon.
right?
And then the yellow. I like primary colors, by the way. It's easier to understand. So only thing left to get at least into a draft mode is the orange section, which is,
No, this is orange.
this is orange?
Well, this, it says right here on the side, look, over here,
Yeah.
minimum standards.
Oh, did you find that? That's what I was looking for.
All right.
I didn't see
Oh,
it.
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, all right.
And then the general rules, basically, I've only got an outline of that today.
Okay. Can you ship the outline to us?
You guys have got it. There's handouts
Oh,
over there.
Okay.
No, I just put that together this morning, so, yeah, last minute stuff, sorry. But I knew this was what I was going to do, was just the outline, because what I wanted to talk about on the general rules was the headings and see if there were any other headings, any other subject matters that we need to flesh out. I'm going to do the same thing with the general rules. I'm going to start with what we have and see how it lines up with what we're doing and edit that and bring that. I promise not to have last minute on a Wednesday night next month, but on this, because this is actually a little bigger. But I want to go back and start with the rules that are there, take out what we're not doing, add in what we are doing that's not in there. But wanted to see from you guys if you thought there were any other subject matters in the topics that we would need to cover, because these are the ones that are in there right now, except for where you see the one little blank. That's where the lease rules were, and so I pulled that completely out because it's in another document.
So in the yellow box on this is what's currently in the document.
Mhm.
Correct?
Are there?
Well, like insurance.
Are they subtopics of any of these? Because I would think you're going to be looking at motor vehicle rules, and they're going to have insurance involved in that. Again, I put this together in a hurry this morning, so it's not really clear.
But you're obviously starting with this, so.
Yeah, okay. I'll go back and review that. Because, like I said, I pulled these right out of the ordinance this morning. And what I'm going to wind up doing is we'll have the general rules, which there's already a referral to airport security program in there, so it'll refer to that. And then this will hit things like it already does the motor vehicle rules, which are not covered specifically in like speed limits and that type of thing. It's not covered in the security side of it. And then I don't know how much of this other stuff I need. I'm going to have to look through it and see whether we can just refer back to city code for, tampering, disturbing airport property, that sort of thing. How much of that is already, covered in another ordinance, such as a criminal trespassing type of ordinance or something like that. And so those are the kind of things that I'm not that familiar with that I'll have to look at pretty hard.
Now, the minimum standards section here you have actually picks up the old section 5-71, which is kind of midway down in the orange section. And we don't have 5-25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 33, 34, or 35. And
Maybe I missed them. Let me go back and look. That's in the orange?
yeah,
Yeah, let me go back and look. I started with Division 2, you can see
Yeah, I
on
see
there,
it.
and that was all minimum standards, but those would have been before this, so let me go back and check. I think those are part of the general rules, but let me go back and check.
okay. The objective here is to get all of this reviewed by this commission, acceptable by this commission, and then drop it on the legal committee's plate to be done at one time. Now, you've already got in your hands, though, some of this, the ordinance change, the resolution on fees. Yeah. And then zoning is another ordinance change, if I'm not mistaken. And do you have those proposed changes yet? Okay. Yeah, you gotta better come up here. Yeah, we were gonna talk about that at planning and zoning.
Thank you. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that was going to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, so I don't think it's on the agenda for legal yet.
Okay, that's fine. We still got some ways. So we're really coordinating a bunch of stuff here that we're trying to get at one point. So we need to probably talk to Mr. Morris again, but he's already left. So let's discuss with Mr. Morris, make sure the planning and zoning ordinance changes are on the plate for Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the thing is, the ordinances are going to take 2 months to get through the council, because first it has to go through legal, then the council has to authorize to advertise, and then the following month the council can act. And I don't want the council to act upon the rewriting of Section 5 until everything else is ready. Now, the yellow regulations and orange minimum standards do not need council approval. They can be approved by the city manager.
I would say the best way, and Counselor, please jump in, but I would think a resolution would be the way to go with those, so they do carry the weight of city law, basically. Because my question then is, if it's just a policy, how do we enforce it if we have to go outside of just something administrative at the airport.
Okay, let's discuss that then, and maybe we have Mr. Patterson here for the next section, I mean, next meeting in June, and we can map out the final route, so to speak, that this will take. All right, that's just my kind of 30,000-foot thoughts. Anybody else?
I think you're spot on.
Okay. The only other thing I'm slightly concerned about is in the minimum standards making reference to the airport master plan. And I am not saying we don't do that, but if we're going to reference another document in some base document, I think we need to have that with us as well. So when we
Okay.
when we take the package to legal, they need to be, whether they have it or not, they need to have a copy of the airport master plan to look at, because we're making reference to it in here. You're nodding, Counselor Stubbs is nodding her
Yeah.
head.
And I
Okay,
think in the end that we wind up with a lot of that because we're removing it from the ordinance and putting it into standalone documents. So you'll see the minimum standards referred to out of the ordinance as a separate document. In this document, it refers to the master plan. It also refers to the master fees list later on when we're talking about flow fees and that sort of thing, because that's in these minimum standards, but we pull it out and put it in another document. So, yeah, I think you're right. We need to have all those for reference.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add to that. I think that we're going to have to also amend those original codes, which are in ordinance, to take them out and move them. So it's going to probably take a little bit longer than you've said, because we have to look at the old, remove or insert, and then move them to either resolution or new ordinance or changed ordinance or whatever.
let me ask you to consider this on your legal agenda. Invite Mr. Stark to come in and brief the legal committee on this effort and where they're going and what to expect, so that the committee's not shocked.
Mr. Chair, interestingly enough, I made a note to myself very early on in this meeting. But yes, I think that, I don't know if the agenda's been posted yet. It will be tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, probably tomorrow.
Yeah, so,
You could still squeeze it
Yeah.
in.
yeah, let's do that if you all don't mind.
We just
taking-
call it an status on
Sure.
revision of section 5.
That sounds good, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for Parker and myself to go over that, because he can go over how the ordinances are going to work with the resolutions and so on and so forth. And yeah, you're right, we've got a lot to pull out.
A lot, so it's.
Yeah.
It's, I at least am envisioning working with several different documents to get this all where we want it, as well as delete and adding and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else on this item? All right. Moving on to item 12.
All right, we were asked to bring back this resolution for further review. I think during some informal meetings out at the Air Center, it was discussed about premium parking spots versus normal parking spots, meaning concrete in a close area to the hangars versus the cost of old asphalt out in the dirt on the South 40. Because right now, everything is the same. And obviously, having them closer on concrete, allows you to do active storage, lets you do a lot of different things, whereas you can't do those things out on the other areas of the air center. So we never considered that as part of when we did the resolution a few months ago to have premium or not premium parking. Now at this moment, we're not suggesting that we do that, but we've brought it in front of you to discuss whether or not that is something that we want to pursue. Now, there's some airplanes that require concrete no matter what, and would those ones be excluded from a premium since we're requiring them that they park them on concrete, like a 777 or A380 if one of those come in? So this, you can see, I brought the resolution, you can see what the existing parking fees that are proposed, and then whether or not you want to move forward with premium parking concept that adds a percentage or adds a few dollars to each of the daily rates. So we're not coming at this moment with a recommendation. What we would like to do is listen to what your feedback is on it, and then we can craft something moving forward. And we do have AirSail here that can comment on this as well, because we would like to obviously hear your input since this affects your customers and your business.
So a question that I have, the current rate that's been changed,
Well, it's not been changed yet. We didn't,
well, but is proposed,
correct.
really wouldn't that already be considered premium? I mean,
Well,
let's say if somebody's got a park in an unpaved area, it would seem like then that would be a reduction, a percentage reduction. Am I not looking at that?
Well, the pricing that we're showing in front of you now is pricing that's been adjusted since it was last done 10 years ago.
Right.
So we're considering this as kind of a baseline price, and it would be, a premium would be higher than that. Because if we move backwards, we're going to be less than what we were 10 years ago.
I see, okay.
And these rates are based on size.
Correct. We adjusted it. Our pricing was set on weight before, 3 groups of weight classes, and that didn't really accurately describe how they're actually being parked. So we changed it to design groups. So we have 6 different design groups.
And these are FAA design groups, right?
Correct. We didn't set these standards. Those are FAA standards.
What kind of demand do you see for premium parking?
Well, we see a lot right now because of COVID, because a lot of planes are being taken care of in an active storage format where there's engine runs and different things being done. But prior to this, there was a lot of planes on the premium areas, like at 1230 area, that weren't being touched and that just were taking up space, but we didn't have any demand to move them out of the way like what we've seen in the last few months. We've shuffled a lot of planes off of those concrete areas to make way for the new airplanes that are coming in. So we've always had planes in the concrete areas because those are the closest and the nicest places to park. Obviously, when we had the Maxes come in, that was not only did they have to be on the concrete, but they also had to use tie downs. And there's only a few places that actually have tie downs available. You know, so that could be a distinguishing factor as well with premium parking, is access to tie downs. Randy, do you want to-
Full disclosure, this is my fault that it's on the agenda, because I was talking to Mr. Stark and Mr. Bleth, and part of the challenge was that things were a little crowded, as alluded to earlier. And how do you get this sorted out? And I will get corrected here in a minute, but my understanding is that concrete is much preferred for obvious reasons as far as parking. And I'm reminded of the Coliseum in Inglewood many, many years ago when the new owner of the Kings and the Lakers came in and looked at ticket sales. in certain sections of the Coliseum, they didn't sell very many tickets. In other areas, they sold a lot, and it was crowded. So what they did is cut the price in the unused areas and raised the price in the popular areas. And then it sorted itself out. So my thinking, and this is just mine, is that we have a finite fixed dollar amount per day. 1, 2, 3, whatever, for concrete parking. If it's important to you, you pay it. If it's not important to you, you park it on asphalt. That's my 2 cents worth, and we'll let it go from there. Somebody want to chime in? Andy, you look like you're just dying to jump in here, so go ahead.
I mean, initially, I don't like that idea at all, but we've had 5 aircraft sink up already in the asphalt areas.
Is that this, since we've had heat, or is this prior to?
A little bit was prior to, but some of this didn't have anything to do with the heat itself. It's just, the asphalt's just crumbling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it looks, initially looking at it, looks great, but we have had 5 aircraft to sync up. And it's been all sizes. We have 767, 737, 2 MD-80s, or 3 MD-80s rather, have sunk up. So, I mean, I understand where you're getting at there with that, but everybody I've got wants to park their airplanes on that concrete, and I mean, I'm not sure how I would even price it out to
And see, and I
United
get that.
Airlines.
And we don't have enough
Because they're going to say
concrete.
all of my aircraft should be parked on the concrete there, you know, what are you telling me? It's not prime parking area? If I got to park off on the, you know, on the asphalt there? I'm not quite sure. I need to digest it, I guess, and really think about it.
Okay.
I understand what you're getting at. I agree with your thought process there, but
It would,
the
to me,
bigger
the idea
picture, I'd
is
have
that
to
we
look at
let
that.
the customer decide if it's important to be on the concrete. And I'm not talking like double. Maybe it's $1 a day more, but that adds up after a while. So the question is there a better way to sort out
I am
the
just going to
limited?
tell you that the customer is going to say that he wants it on concrete, period. All of them. It's just like they don't come in and, hey, you know, some of these you can park on asphalt and some, they're leaving it up to us basically to move the airplanes around, understanding that they're a limited space right now. You've got American Airlines with aircraft that are obviously going to be beer cans here soon. They don't want to put them on asphalt. They love them parked on that concrete, you know. I mean, it'd be a little bit of a management
Well,
thing.
this goes back to, and what you're saying is kind of what I was saying. It seems like this is the rate, and it's the premium rate. That's what everybody's expectations are, so that's the rate. If perhaps somebody has to be moved over onto asphalt, maybe they get a 10% discount. I don't know, but
Just managing it, I think there could be a little bit of fist fight from time to time. I have an aircraft sitting on asphalt. Let's say I have to remove engines. I need to pull them on concrete because I can't do that on asphalt because of the weight of the engine.
Right.
So I pull them on I put them on concrete. Let's say they go, whoa, wait a minute, I don't want to do that engine change right now. I want to do it 30 days from now. I mean, how's the charges going to run? There's snakes in those weeds. I don't know how it's going to.
In your mind, it's just a flat rate. and
I would
you
rather
get-
have a
and you
flat
get-
rate
and you
regardless
get
and
what
let
you
us
get.
manage it.
It's fine with me. We keep it the way we just did it. It was up for discussion.
Commissioner Call.
My question was just, is that industry standard to have the option?
So industry standard, there are places that will charge a premium to park in certain areas, but for Goodyear, it's one fee, regardless of where you park, that's the fee, but there's not a lot of concrete there. I mean, let's say you had a customer's got 50 airplanes, and you have this premium to concrete or asphalt, and they go, no, I'll park it on asphalt. Well, you just lost all kinds of revenue you could have instead of having just a flat fee. Regardless of whether you parked on asphalt or concrete, this is the fee. Because you're going to have some customers that'll have a group of aircraft, they'll go, all right, fine, I'll put it on asphalt. We'll manage it that way. And that's just a loss of monies you could have instead of just having a flat fee of where to park it. Who knows, you might end up with a bunch of concrete with no airplanes parked on it.
I understand.
Well, and we have different levels of asphalt. Not all our asphalt's the
I'm speaking to a
same.
customer now who has 777s. Obviously, we're running out of room for wide bodies. They've got 8 airplanes, 777s. They're a great customer of air sales. They have, hey, what if we use steel plates under the tires and we'll park them out in asphalt? That's great. Well, you're liable to have other customers have that same idea where they may opt to park it on asphalt to save money, and it's a loss to you in the end.
Okay. Do you think they would do the plates and put it out there on asphalt?
The customer I'm talking to right now is, yes, they will do the plates. We're getting pricing on it,
Is it a plate or is it a grate?
It's a plate. It's
Really?
an actually 1-inch thick steel plate. That's what they use in Goodyear.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm getting pricing on that.
I have a question for you. What's our competition? At the end of the day, we want customers with their airplanes parked here. So who
Right.
am I competing with and how do they do it? I mean, Goodyear, I always hear Goodyear, this part of the country, right? That's one of my major competitors. Who else? And how do they do it?
Victorville,
Right?
I don't know how, and it's the soil differences. Here you can park on an asphalt and it's truly dirt, where in Goodyear and over in Victorville, it's that hard compacted sand, that will hold a lot of weight, and you don't really have that steel plate issue. Goodyear uses steel plates for those customers who want it. There's some that they've never had an airplane sink up there, so they really don't care, but here, I would use steel plates on anything higher than a 757 on some of this asphalt we've got out here.
But are we competitive?
I don't, the pricing, I don't.
Well, we got 310 planes here.
Yeah, we're competitive. And that's what went into this initially when we were putting this together, is doing the market analysis. So we were well below the market using the rates that we were from 10 years prior. And this puts us in the same market as everyone else. Some are still higher than us, like
Every contract I put
Victorville.
together, the first questions I'm asked are, what are the parking fees, the daily parking fees? And then after that, we get into the actual storage numbers. But they want to know how much it's going to cost me to park
Okay.
the airplane.
Fair enough. I sense there's not a lot of enthusiasm for a premium.
Was this your idea?
Yeah, this is my idea.
Sounds like we're creating.
I'm just the sacrificial
Okay.
person to present it.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Well, this is the beauty of having a discussion.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Okay. But am I correct in saying that I don't see any enthusiasm for a premium?
True.
Okay. Then we don't have to make a motion or anything. We can kind of take it like that. Good to know. Hey, not everything is.
We might want to reconsider that chairmanship position.
But look at it this way. I'm amenable to pushback, and I'm willing to listen. That's always a key quality. All right, Mr. Stark, what do you have as proposed agenda items for June to see if your list is?
So right now I've got bringing back, let's see, let me run through this real quick. See, we were going to bring back the Job Corps, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I've got that one. And we weren't bringing back plating. And we are bringing back tear down.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to bring that back, since that's coming back in July for review?
What the,
Tear down.
let's,
July is. like-
yeah, let's bring it back in June because July 1 is, I thought we're looking at July 16th as the July meeting, and the June one is the 18th. So I'd rather talk about it again in June. Okay.
Just an update if nothing else.
Yep.
Okay, so that one's on there. I will bring back the general rules and the minimum standards. And this one is dead. And that's what I have for now.
We
Okay.
had Juan
Yeah.
Fuentes.
As part of that
he's
discussion
in
on
the-
property 57.
Yeah, he's in the Job Corps property.
Okay. Anything else you see on the horizon you thinking we might need to talk about?
At some point, I'm thinking, I'm just looking through this list, and at some point, I'm thinking too, as we go through the parking lot that we're going to be doing in the fall, I want to present the scope of that project to you guys and just kind of get a good overview. I mean, we've talked about it before, but
Okay.
before we go into actually saying, thumbs up, let's go for it, I'd like a last review of the scope, simply because we've talked about having solar on it and not having solar on it. The people that I'm talking to at the moment for solar would be a power purchase agreement. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that as we move forward with that.
Okay.
The rest of it is parking and covered parking and that sort of thing, which we've already talked about. But I would kind of like to hit the solar end of it in a little more depth, but I don't have any details yet.
Okay.
So it may not be June, but it could be.
Okay. Anybody? Anything else? There's sitting out there a $5 million capital outlay for the air center that the county has. And we don't really have a plan yet. I'm hoping that something could be discussed at the next meeting on that. That's, maybe discuss that with Mr. Nebb and Mr. Riggs and see where we're at.
Yeah.
Make a
We
wish list.
we may have enough time.
Yeah. Mr. Stark made a wish list we sent over to the county and, but it was just something to start a discussion and it, doesn't necessarily mean it's where it needs to go. So that's my thought. Anybody, anything else on that?
I thought that was going to be a discussion between Joe and Stan.
That's where it starts, but I think it needs to also come to this group. It is a key part of the air center. I mean,
But have they met on the $5 million?
Yes, they have.
okay.
All right, I didn't know they'd met.
I didn't either, to be honest with you. Okay. Anything else? All right. Reports, announcements. I think we did all that. Public participation. Mr. Hitchcock, you want to jump in here and share any wisdom for us?
Good to see everyone. I hope this economy bounces back quickly enough to get air service increased quickly.
Okay. That's great. Counselor Stubbs, anything we failed to address you think we need to be talking about? Okay. How many, can I ask how many people you've brought in over there at Air Sale, or is that an inappropriate question?
140 so far.
That's awesome. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Anything else, commissioners? All right. I have at the time here of 12:09, and we are adjourned until next month.